Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we are looking for the best of fun, escapist, just entertaining books. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. It's going to be a graphic novel, Spy vs. Family, by Tatsuya Endo, if I pronounced that even close to correct. So this is a Japanese style of graphic novel, so a manga. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. It could be manga, but we'll say manga. And it's the first in a series. I think there's quite a few books in this series. And it's the classic Japanese style that you read backwards, which is very different for me. I think this is may not be the first one of this style of books I've ever done, but it's very unusual for me to try. But I decided because it looked like it would be a fun, humorous book. And I was right, it was humorous. Okay, so let's start with let me say what the genre is. So besides being a graphic novel genre, I would also say it would fall under the comedy action for what style it is. Okay, so the plot. So what we have is our main character is the gentleman, and his code name is Twilight, and which makes me think of My Little Ponies, but whatever. So his code name Twilight, and he is a spy, and he needs to get into spy on a headmaster or somebody involved in an academy for children. And he cannot disguise himself to be a child. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So what he needs to do is be a parent of a child. So when he goes out and collects a foster child, basically thinking he will temporarily adopt this child in order to put her in the academy, and then he has an excuse to be around the academic side. In the process of this, he finds out that it would be better if he had a wife. So he finds somebody who kind of needs a fake boyfriend to fit in. And so he collects her, makes a deal and says, okay, I'll be your fake boyfriend, you can be my fake wife for this, it'll be great. And she agrees. Turns out she is an assassin. And very quickly on in the story, you discover that the little girl that they've adopted is actually a telepath. So none of the characters tell each other anything about those background character traits. He doesn't say he's a spy, she doesn't say that she's an assassin, and the little girl does not say that she's a telepath. So that kind of just makes it a comedy as how they interact with each other and the world around them, trying to get their jobs done, but at the same time hiding who they are. So that's what makes it a funny story. And I will say some of the things that I like are the humor. So it did have quite a few humorous moments. It does go a little over the top, just like some anime does. This is very much the kind of excess that Japanese media is known for, let's put it that way, with emotions or situations that you're like, this is not realistic. But it's kind of, since it does have that humorous tone, you can tell that it's meant to be over the top, to just be ridiculous. So I did chuckle a couple of times at this. So the humor did land several times. Sometimes it didn't, but for the most part, they did a good job with the humorous aspects of this. Another thing I will say is I liked the art. So as a graphic novel, there's lots of art all over, giving the characters expressions or doing the action scenes, things like that. And the art on this I liked the art style. It was attractive, and it did help the story. So it was a benefit to the story. It wasn't one of those, like I've seen some where it's just like a whole bunch of talking heads and they just talk the whole time, and you're like, why do we even have this in a visual form when the visuals don't add to the story? But this one, it does. It adds a lot to the story. The scenery, the expression, like I said, the action, just all around, they did a good job. So the person who created this sounds like they're both the author and the illustrator, and quite talented. I'm pretty impressed with that. Okay, Next thing I will say that this is probably a young adult level of read, and it would be appropriate for a young adult. We'll say, a little bit below teenager and up. There is violence in this and action, but it's kind of superhero-esque, and it doesn't go too much in the gore. Definitely violence, so our spy has a gun and our assassin has swords, and you do see blood in some scenes, but that's not really the focus of this story, and it's not excessive. It's not gross. And the situation of the family could be romantic, but at least in this book it isn't at all. There's no romance whatsoever. So it's very appropriate for a young adult or a little bit younger. So I liked that. I liked the interpersonal relationships of the characters. So the way the author has them interacting is, they have their skill sets and they utilize them pretty much all the time. Oh, somebody's watching me, the spy notices. And the little girl that's a telepath is like, oh, somebody's watching? Is there danger? What should I do? And, danger comes and the assassin, solves the problem. And, they all work together in this situation, but still trying to make it seem like, oh, that's totally normal that this happened, and it works out well. I like the way they play off of each other. The female character, I think her name is maybe, is the assassin, is not a feminist, would probably not particularly like her character. She is not the brightest crayon. She's a little bit naive. Again, there's kind of a stereotype going on there, and it's pretty large. She almost comes across to me as neurodivergent, maybe autistic, like she takes things very literally in a lot of respects that maybe she shouldn't, and doesn't seem to have a handle on interpersonal relationships very well, that kind of thing. And it can come across as a little bit, what is it, chauvinistic, as maybe not a good showing for a strong female. But she is a strong female in this respect that, she's physically strong, like, she has all the martial arts and blade work and, can balance a tray on her toes and things like that. And the little girl also balances out by being pretty smart, as for a female character. So some people who are, feminists or really, really want all the way around perfect female characters who do everything wonderfully and are strong in all respects may not like it, but I liked it fine. I liked the way the characters were handled because it felt cartoony. They feel very superhero-esque, and you just don't expect realism in that respect. So I like that. Let's see. Things I dislike. So there's not a huge amount, but I will say it is the Japanese graphic novel style where you have to read from the back and you read the picture frames out of order. Although I will say, for something that I'm not used to, I didn't actually struggle that much. For the first several pages, I was very conscious of what direction I was reading and turning the pages. But after that, it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't confusing about like, okay, do I read this panel or do I read this panel? It was pretty obvious what order you were supposed to read things in once you got started. So I will say I don't think that somebody who's unfamiliar with this style of story would have too much trouble getting into it as far as being able to follow it. But I don't necessarily say that I love that style of book. Again, I've said before, this is a little bit over-the-top ridiculous. So you have some things that are obviously meant to be humorous. So for example, towards the very beginning, the spy is trying to protect some sort of government official who is going to be ousted from his position because it's discovered he has a toupee. I mean, really? Is that enough to lose your job? It's a little bit over the top ridiculous, right? And then later on in the story, a headmaster or teacher or somebody is evaluating their family, and it's like over the top, they need elegance, so elegant. It's like this big, huge, like he's practically on his knees as an old guy saying, that was elegant. And it's so over the top, so ridiculous, that it kind of gets farcical to that extent. So this can be a good thing for the comedy and a bad thing if you're like, oh my goodness, this is just too much. So it kind of straddles the border there on whether that's a good thing or not. And the last thing I'll say is this does end on a cliffhanger. You kind of can predict where the story is going to go, but it definitely just kind of ends suddenly because of the way the format of this is, and it is part of a huge long series. Yeah, so if you don't want something that's standalone, I'm sorry, this is not standalone. Okay, so my overall opinion was that it was good with some caveats. So I recommend it, generally speaking, but I will say that if manga style books are not your thing, like you do not like that kind of comic book, graphic novel style of book, this probably will not change your mind. So I wouldn't necessarily step out and say, oh, this is, a wonderful book for anybody and everybody. It doesn't hit that note. But for somebody who likes that kind of book, absolutely, it's 100% fantastic. I liked it for what it was. Somebody that you know in your life that likes graphic novels or likes manga but hasn't done this one, I would totally get this as a gift for somebody. This would be the kind of thing that somebody who likes this style of book would really like, I think. It was well done. So I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up with some, caveats on whether you yourself would like it or not. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and I hope you join me next week.